Despite there being a pandemic and the world coming to a stop, new music has been coming out. That's the beauty of music in the current world in 2020, where film and TV have to stop production. Bands can keep producing music in home studios and publishing it online. So this is my attempt to catch up on 6 albums I've missed over the past few months. This is where I'm asked by my patrons and everyone else, how did I miss this? Thanks to my patrons, I was given suggestions for albums that came out over the past 6 months that they want reviewed. I let my patrons vote twice from a long list of selections, and these are the 6 albums that they want covered. And if you are interested in voting on upcoming videos, please consider supporting Rocked on Patreon. More info in the video description link below. I'm grateful I have Patreon and Discord members who are active and have music to discuss because wow, 2020 has really thrown everyone off course with delays and cancellations. But there's still new music to discuss. The first album to talk about is Amends, the long-awaited remade album from Grey Daze. For those unaware, this is the unearthed and updated album full of songs from Chester Bennington's band before Linkin Park. All of the vocals for the album were recorded long ago, and the instrument work has all been redone by the other band members to bring Amends to light in 2020 and keep the candle burning for Chester's memory. I had heard the big single Sickness many times on SiriusXM and knew going into that album that Amends would not be much like Linkin Park, and that's fine. It's a totally different project revolving around that 90s style of rock, and being completely honest, this album has that alt-rock and post-grunge styling down. There are some standout songs like Sometimes that really hit home with that 90s style, and you hear it in Chester's delivery also. The remade instrumental tracks do their best to work with Chester's recorded audio, and for what it's worth, it's fine in the mixing. You can tell they put time into making things sound fluid. There are simpler alternative tracks on Amends with some soft single-note tunes that really hit well. Chester was capable of so much, and we were still learning that in 2020. Not every song on Amends is going to blow you off your feet. To be honest, it is a standard rock album in many ways, but the songs feel complete and there's some good steady guitar work. This is another case of hearing what else Chester did besides Linkin Park, and through all the changes in style of Linkin Park over the years, Chester proved he never wanted to stick with one thing. Music of his after his passing, like a project with Mark Morton or his original band Grey Daze, proved he was destined to succeed in many different ways, regardless of who he was working with. Overall, Amends is part tribute and part fulfillment of a past dream. I think Chester would be proud of how this turned out and how I feel the men in Grey Daze proved their talent in reworking their music and making something truly unique. If you're a diehard Chester Bennington fan and want to hear him in something outside of Linkin Park, you'll be satisfied with Amends. Up next is a band I talked about years ago on How Did I Miss This, Lovebites, with their third full album, Electric Pentagram. I loved Lovebites' debut full album Awakening from Abyss, and I have been following the group ever since I discovered them. It's true power metal from some extremely talented women. Electric Pentagram is a long album at 12 tracks with most songs running over 6 minutes, and in each song you hear some blistering performances from both guitarists and Lovebites. Tracks like Signs of Deliverance and Golden Destination make sure to point out just how big of masterclass guitar players Miyako and Midori are. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing those names. I said over the past 2 years that Lovebites is a new force to be reckoned with, and they definitely prove just how powerful they are in Electric Pentagram, but my biggest issue with the album is that it's missing that extra something special that was featured in the previous Lovebites albums. A huge hook, or something to latch onto instantly, is in past releases, and it just feels like it's missing here. That is in no way saying this album isn't worth hearing, because it truly is, especially if you enjoyed the first 2 LPs. There are tracks on Electric Pentagram that will definitely make you mouth the word wow while listening just at the sheer amazement from the skill presented. Lovebites deliver exactly what you would expect and offer plenty of it. Of the 3 full Lovebites albums, this one had the least lasting effect on me. It's just lacking that one thing that makes some of the songs stand out a little more or add some variety to them. They all have a similar sounding feel after a while, especially on a long album like this. All that said, it's still good, and it's still worth hearing. Overall, Electric Pentagram holds up in the band's tradition of power metal and holds steady to what is helping them make waves overseas. Lovebites' latest will definitely satisfy the band's current fans, as well as help prove that these ladies could someday set the world on fire. The third album to talk about is Titans of Creation, the 13th studio album from thrash legends Testament. I've been a fan of Testament for a while now, and I do feel their talent in thrash ranks as high as some of the big four, even if their fame and popularity isn't nearly as high as names like Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, or Slayer. On Titans of Creation, you get exactly what you think of when you hear 80s thrash being mentioned. Chuck Billy and company definitely play to their strengths and make a 12-track album filled with low chugging riffs and wild solos while Billy shouts out wartime and evil phrases. The last full album I heard from Testament was Brotherhood of the Snake in 2016, and I really really enjoyed it for how fired up the band sounded, and everything is coming in clear, and there was so much fury and speed. The biggest difference between that and 2020's Titan of Creation is that this truly feels like it's paint-by-numbers Testament. Interchangeable songs, standard formats, not bad by any means, but Testament has done better. Tracks like Children of the Next Level and Night of the Watch show off exactly why Testament is still a staple of thrash and have earned the respect they've been given over the decades, but these songs also prove the point that Testament is comfortable in their groove. Testament is good in their groove, so why should they move out of it? Fair argument. The guitar work, thick bass, heavy drums, everything sounds solid. Some of the solos are extended out and work well, but as the album goes on, you really hear a ton of similar sounding tracks and you forget which song you're on. You won't hear me ever say a bad thing about Testament. I honestly think they've never put out a terrible album, and that continues, but admittedly, I don't know if I've heard a Testament album in many years from front to back that was amazing. This is thrash in the sense of comfort food, that you always know you can come back to it when you want thrash and nothing else. You'll get just that, and you'll be happy with it. Overall, Titans of Creation will deliver exactly what you expect in a thrash album, especially one from such an established act. It checks all the boxes for Testament fans, and while not necessarily thinking outside the box, the album is well created and lives up to the legacy that these Titans have made over the years. Continuing the heavier side of music, we have Verminous, the 9th studio album from the Black Dahlia Murder. Just like Testament, it's been several years since I've heard a full album listen from the Black Dahlia Murder, this time going back to Everblack in 2013. The lineup in the Black Dahlia Murder since 2013 has stayed mostly consistent, and in 2020, the band is looking to go deeper than death metal and give something more atmospheric and driven from beginning to end. Verminous truly feels atmospheric also. There is definitely a mood set in this album, especially when you read along with the lyrics and hear all the additional audio added to the instruments and vocals. Many songs like Child of Night and The Wereworm's Feast, while both not extremely long tracks, have so much going on from wild guitar work and screaming to crushing drums, and the transitions are seamless. What's interesting is that there's not one complete standard style here. There's much more variety than I would have expected, with shades of thrash and speed along with the squealing and the vocals. It's intense. Songs feel complete, and it's the additional audio work for effects to not be part of the actual music, but rather add to the mood that sets Verminous apart. This is an album that is made for earbuds and headphone listening to really take everything in. Add some killer high-note guitar work throughout, and you have a lot to take in through 10 tracks at just under 40 minutes. Verminous was a step up from the last time I sat down to hear the Black Dahlia Murder. The music is sonically stronger and more varied in tone than the album that I was expecting, which is also a huge plus. It's not going to be for everyone, as most melodic death metal isn't. But if you're looking for something heavy and different, this is worth hearing. Overall, Verminous revels in expanding their boundaries and venturing into making something more creative in a complete album. The thunderous rhythms and high volume peaks definitely prove the Black Dahlia Murder are capable of more than what many would expect. For some truly engaging and heavy and hypnotic music, grab some earbuds, sit down, and turn it up. I feel like my patrons only care about the heaviest of music, and for some reason, they decided they wanted to hear about Hindsight, the 8th full album from Emmure. When doing research for Emmure's latest, I knew going in all about the many lineup changes in the band and Frankie Palmieri's enlightenment over the past few years, admitting that much of his early material truly embarrassed him. It was when I started hearing that, and it had been some time since the disaster that was Look at Yourself came out, I wondered if it was possible for Palmieri and the band under the Emmure name to finally steer the ship into a new direction. I should have known, because Hindsight reinforced my old theory. Frankie Palmieri is his own worst enemy. Emmure is wretched because the music and lyrics is all done by Frankie, and he just doesn't have it. When I talk about the scene style of music and how it's being currently poisoned by talentless bands who don't have anything but a tough boy pose while screaming about being sad, that's Emmure. Hindsight is shockingly amateurish in the sense that so much of the music is steady riffs and beats with effect mixing and vocal mods to add their sense of variety, when in reality, it's all just basic work. There's nothing good about it at all. There are MacBook Pro musicians and GarageBand students who can create full tracks better than this, Everything after the opening track, Finally Understanding Nothing, is weak. Frankie either screaming or shrieking about nothing. The music is completely one note. Hindsight is 32 minutes, and I swear it feels like an hour. Some songs like I've Seen God and Persona Non Grata sound identical. It's scene music for fans of background noise resembling a fork caught in a garbage disposal, cantankerous low growls, and chugga-chug riffs. If you were wondering why I'm not talking about the lyrics, it's because I don't want to start laughing so hard that I break a rib. Being honest, this is better than that landfill Look at Yourself back in 2017. But Hindsight is still a dumpster fire. They tried to double down on that nu metal vibe and channel some Jonathan Davis on this, who Frankie said is a big inspiration for him. If I was Jonathan Davis, I would be insulted to be recognized by anything on here, especially being an influence for some of this music. Emmure might have improved a little, but it's still embarrassing. Overall, Hindsight is proof that Emmure have earned fans only through shock and edgelord attitude, because this music is nothing but stock notes and riffs behind a grown man trying to redeem his past behavior through growling and shrieking like a dog. If you're into mid-30-year-olds pretending to be tough and hoping to not have his past brought up, all the awful music, then you could probably still do better than Hindsight. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button below on this video if you've been enjoying it so far. It helps the video and the channel out a ton. Thank you. Now, the last album to talk about, I Let It In and It Took Everything, the second studio album from UK's Loathe. There was a ton of hype for Loathe before this album came out, and when I first heard them described as British Deftones, needless to say, I was excited. After hearing the song Two-Way Mirror, all the Deftones comparisons came through in what I heard, and I was sold on the band. It's not a perfect comparison, however, as Loathe get brutally loud to the point of screaming insanity and screeching at points along with heavy guitars. But on the flip side, the shoegaze and tranquil music on this album is stellar. There are full post-metal tracks along with the shoegaze style incorporating synthesizers and serene guitars that add a ton of variety through all of I Let It In and It Took Everything. This is an album with extreme polarized volumes in that sense, so be prepared when you go in. A track like Broken Vision Rhythm has hardcore and post-hardcore elements and comes out swinging. Later in the album comes Is It Really You, which is peaceful and moving. Then there are tracks like A Sad Cartoon, which uses elements of both. Loathe refuse to pick a lane, but rather show you how well they can do in different styles, all in one album. On first listen, the experience might seem intimidating because the louder sections are thunderous and the transitions are sometimes instant. But I can honestly say that if you give Loathe an open chance, you'll find something you love. I'm on the bandwagon now. The more I listen to Loathe, the more I realize the Deftones comparisons, but also just how they're doing their own thing. Everything on this album feels unique, from the equally wild and ferocious side to the soothing and deep. It's an anomaly of an album that encompasses many subgenres, and they nail all of them. Overall, I Let It In and It Took Everything is a rare playthrough of songs that make an extreme listen through many different emotions. Whether it's specific styles you are interested in or you love both the heavy and light, Loathe has something to offer on a fantastic album. On first listen, it might be shocking, but if you let it in, this album will win you over. And that was a look at 6 albums I missed over the past few months. What did you think of the albums I covered? Leave a comment and let everyone know. Big thanks to my patrons, and especially the patrons who voted on these albums, and a special thanks to Brandon Bairdfeld, Chris Doman, and Dom Smith. If you'd like to have a say in upcoming videos, please consider supporting Rocked on Patreon. More info in the video description and info card. Please subscribe to get notified of upcoming videos. You can check out my concert photography on Instagram, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook and Twitter.